everyone. Welcome to another Leah Reviews. I'm your host, Leah, and I'm going to be, of course, reviewing the most recently released of Sonic the Hedgehog Presents, the Chaotix Casefiles EP3, where we finally get to actually hear the debut of Tangle and Whisper's official canon voices. Yeah, this was hinted in like episode 2 in the previous episode. And I have to say, their voices are pretty spot on. Like, I kind of had like, kind of similar to what Sonic Revolution does with like Tangle and Whisper, and the voice actors really slayed it, and of course, the official voice actors for Tangle and Whisper was actually revealed in their credits, and I think it's like Ashlyn Madden as Tangle. And then the Whispers, I think, is Anairis Qui. Let me look this up just to be sure because I hope I'm not like butchering their name because if you know what I mean, I have to like look this stuff up. Um, Let me go check. I just need to be sure that Anairis Quiñones or something. I hope I pronounced that right. So that is their actual canon official voices. And we get to hear their debut in this episode. So basically, what ended up happening is that obviously, they hinted in the actual you know, obviously they continue from the previous episode, me with with Vector and Sonic still locked in their prison cell, obviously. And Eggman is just so like invested in this story that Vector's telling, and he really wants to know who has been stealing the astroscopic lens and for what reason. And of course, Eggman is like wondering how is Rouge, Tangle, and Whisper involved? And of course, obviously, Vector begins recounting the events, and obviously, the most recent thing was that Rouge provided a lead to pretty much Spiral Hill. So Vector, Espio, and Charmy go to Spiral Hill and they go to the Spiral Hill Mineral Museum, um, where apparently there's another astroscopic lens. So it's not just the one in Station Square. Apparently there's like another one. We don't know if it's like the same one or if it's like another one, or so basically the Chaotix decide to plan basically to arrive before the thief and then they set a trap. So I think what's very interesting is that when the Chaotix arrive, they notice that Gunn hasn't shown any interest in the Spiral Hill Museum, Mineral Museum. So I think that's very interesting. Um, and then obviously they find Mr. Kish again. And and then they kind of just hint that Jewel is like busy with something else, so that's why we don't hear her voice at all. Obviously the focus is supposed to be on like the Chaotix teaming up with Tangle and Whisper. Like this kind of really feels like IDW, obviously. Like I kind of feel like, they're really like this really feels like it's IDW, like an IDW storyline, even though it's like an audio drama, obviously. So I think with what they did was very astounding. And literally, I think with what they did is they actually did something really cool. And we get introduced to them, obviously. And and I think with Mr. Uh, yeah, and then like obviously they're very surprised to see Mr. Kish there, um, and stuff. So so basically, Mr. Kish is there in terms of like in basically in Jules' place. So basically, they meet up with Tangle and Whisper, and Whisper sounds exactly like the Revo VA for Whisper. So hearing Whisper like an actual canon voice, I kind of like how it sounds very, very, very close to the Revo VA for Whisper. Tangle, I was like, it caught me by surprise, but like at the same time, I think they really because from my perspective, I think Sega took note of, the way the fans interpret the characters' voices, and then they kind of just brought that in and like casted a voice actor that could at least sound very energetic. And I think they casted perfectly for Tangle and Whisper. So um, you know, so fans do have some, influence. So that's what I truly enjoyed. Obviously, we get to see Tangle's like hyperactive energy in audio form, and I think it was perfect. Um, so basically, Vector explains that the astroscopic lens is displayed on the ground floor, of the Spiral Hill Museum. And they basically want to lock it all down. And Vector comes up with like, hey, let's actually set up a perimeter so that way we can actually, figure out how to do this. To catch the thief, before they steal this other astroscopic lens. Um, and Charmy actually reveals that he actually bought walkie-talkies from a yard sale. Um, and he needs to get it at the Chaotix Copter. So and Charmy is just so adorable, just calling himself the Chaotix Quartermaster. Um, so basically what Vector does is that he assigns Tangle and Whisper to the opposite positions on the second level. Um and Whisper is visibly uneasy. And SBO catches on to it that like, are you worried about the plan? And Tangle clarifies, no, it's just something deeper. And obviously, for you Sonic fans, if you've read the Sonic IDW comics, Tangle kind of goes into the Diamond Cutters, that Whisper was the sole survivor of the Diamond Cutters. Um, and unfortunately, if you all know, um, like she was betrayed by Mimic, you know, um, and basically Whisper's concern stems from the possibility of imposters. And here's the thing, like Mimic, obviously in his name, he can like pretty much like he can like shapeshift into anyone. As long like apparently it was like I think it was emphasized by Evan Stanley. I believe that I think with Mimic, he can only mimic and shapeshift if as long as he's seen the person before. So that's how Mimic's shapeshifting ability works. So just to give you guys some context for those who don't read the IDW, I kind of dabble here and there. Um, but Tangle assures Whisper that she won't let anything bad happen to her, just to ease her nerves. And this gets very, very juicy. So basically they all go at their positions that they were assigned to. Vector keeps Charmy with him because like Vector's like, oh no, because as you all know, Charmy can be very loud, you know. So Vector's like, yeah, like I don't he's like he might accidentally like, ruin the operation. Um and then obviously everything's going well at first, but then everything goes wrong pretty fast. And Tangle encounters what appears to be Tails. Um, and then apparently this is not Tails. Um, and then pretty much like Tangle felt false for the explanation that like, oh, Vector called me at the last minute to help. And then basically this quote unquote Tails attacks Tangle, knocking her down and disabling her walkie-talkie. And then basically, since Tangle couldn't get a hold of the other, she literally had to scream in order to warn everybody in the building um that the thief is inside and disguised himself as Tails. And then the museum's power cuts out like conveniently. So it gets very juicy and all that. And then basically they since it's blackout, they can't really see what's going on. And then um this Tangle, like there's like a second Tangle that like basically wraps both Vector and Espio. And then when I think Charmy ends up finding the lights to turn it back on, it's like an emergency generator. And then it turns out there's like two identical Tangles. And as you can see, this is Mimic. One of them's Mimic, obviously, because who else would it be? And Espio decides to sneak up behind one of them, and then Vector approaches the other one on the right. And then Whisper demands that the fake reveal themselves, obviously. And and then basically, Whisper was able to identify the imposter because the real Tangle's willingness to be shot at. That's how Whisper was able to, you know, figure out which Tangle was the fake. And then obviously the fake Tangle dodges at the last second, putting SBO directly in the line of fire. So Whisper does fire her Wispin. Um, and it says before Whisper can shoot, Rouge swoops in and pulls Espio out of harm's way, which is quite interesting. I was not expecting that, because obviously we don't fully know the details why Rouge is involved as of yet. They're building it up, but it's very, very good. And then obviously by the time, the lights come back on, they flicker on and off again. Unfortunately, the imposter and the astroscopic lens, the second one apparently is gone. And then SBO gets mad at Whisper for nearly shooting him. And then though she assures him he was never truly in any danger, he adds that he can't tell whether Rouge grabbed the lens before the thief or if Rouge herself is the thief. So this gets super, super juicy, and I enjoyed it so much. I think also, now we're trying to think, they're thinking, is Rouge the thief? Did Rouge get the lens before the thief, or if Rouge herself is the thief? So it kind of brings up some interesting questions because you're dealing with, obviously they're dealing with Mimic, you know, who could obviously pretty much shapeshift into anyone as long as he's seen them at least once. Um, and then obviously, Tangle explains that she tried to warn them, but her walkie-talkie ran out of battery. And Charmy realized that he never checked the batteries on the walkie-talkies. So that was a big oof on Charmy's part, but um, and then basically as um and then SBO decides to go after Charmy because Charmy like blames himself that, oh my gosh, SBO almost got killed, you know. And then Vectors insist they need to review exactly what went wrong, and SBO convinces Charmy to return. And then Mr. Kish gets angry at them for like, how did you not prevent the astroscopic lens to be stolen, right? And they were basically kicked out of the museum. And Vector concludes that their only option now is to catch the thief and figure out who it really is. And obviously, SBS suggests several possibilities. Rouge could be responsible, the thief could have been impersonating Rouge, or the two might be working together. So there is possibilities, right? Because obviously, like I said, they're dealing with Mimic. He was only mentioned once in this entire thing, but like I said, if you are if you've been re catching up, or at least know about Tangle, Whisper, and Mimic in the Sonic IDW, then you could piece together. Um, but I think what was interesting is that SBO, I think, asked if anyone saw Rouge when the two Tangles appeared, but with the power outage, no one could get a clear look. And Whisper said that her mask didn't record anything because it was too dark. And then all of a sudden, gun soldiers surround the area and seize control of the museum, forcing the Chaotix to retreat. So that's interesting. So it like this Chaotix Case Files is just so brilliant, and I've enjoyed it a lot. And then obviously at the end of this episode, Eggman, of course, is unimpressed by the loss of yet another lens, but asks why Gun was involved. Vector he basically agrees to explain what was going on with Gun on the condition that he and Sonic get some water. And yeah, like literally it's mentioned that like Sonic is like Vector's voice is getting a little like um if you've been talking a lot, you need water. It's that type of thing. So um and then basically Vector promises Sonic that he's only getting started and teases the next part of the story, calling it the Unified Uniform Usurpation, I guess. And then like Sonic's unimpressed by the name, and then Vector's like, okay, let's put Assault on Gun Base X. So I think overall, this really feels like it's Sonic IDW. Like they're really tapping into it, and they are doing such a great job because it's like obviously they're dealing with Mimic, you know. Like I said, he's only been mentioned once, it's like who else would it be? And I really love the intrigue of like where is this going? Because it's like, why is Rouge involved is the question. Because it could be she could be working with Gun, I wouldn't really be surprised, you know. She has history with working with Gun, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. But overall, I have to say this one was like a 9 out of 10. Like they are just slaying these like episodes, and I am super excited to see where this is going, and of course big huge shout out to Ashlyn Madden and oh my gosh, I am blanking out on of Whispers like VA. I'm so sorry. Like okay, let let me go check it out again because I cannot remember her name for the life of me. Anairis Quiñones. I hope I pronounced that right. They did such an amazing job. And yeah, that's the end of my review. I really enjoyed this episode, and hopefully you guys too, because now we actually get like actual canon, official canon voices for Tangle and Whisper. Um, so I'm really proud of what Sega has been they're putting all the stops on this audio drama, and they've been doing such a great job. And I'm super excited to see episode 4 next Tuesday. So that's the end of my review, and hopefully I'll see you guys for the next episode of Sonic the Hedgehog presents the Chaotix Casefiles. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on that bell notification for upcoming live streams and video content. And have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.